Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Bob from Live Music here. Tonight, I am absolutely pleased and honored to have with us probably one of the most significant impresarios of the Baton Rouge music scene, Mr. Chris Maxwell of the Red Dragon Listening Room. Chris, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Chris has an amazing story and a lot of different facets. But I want to start tonight talking about what has become a mainstay in the Baton Rouge music scene here, which is the Red Dragon Listening Room. It's now in its 19th year, and it's going strong. So you can tell me a little bit about how the Red Dragon started from its early beginnings on Government Street to where you are now.
Well, we had a record label for many years, 14 to be exact, and Binky Records was just a lot of fun. But as time went by, it got to the point where everybody in the world could make a record, and some of them shouldn't have. And so we just wanted to keep helping out the musicians and doing stuff, and we decided we'd start a nonprofit music venue. It started out as a not-for-profit because nonprofit is actually a legal term, and eventually that is what we became. But starting out, it was just, hey, we'll get 50 people together, and all the money goes to the artists, and it was so informal. We had bought an old building, and my kids lived in the apartment upstairs while they went to LSU. And the downstairs sat empty, and we said, how perfect would this be? So we started doing little shows there. It was mostly just trying to make up for when M's Fine and Mellow Cafe went out of business. Yeah. We had no place to go. We spent all our time, listening to music over there, and they did everything well music-wise, and then suddenly we had nothing in town, and that's how we started.
Well, one of the things that's really nice, because you have grown to where you've had major acts that have toured, and you've developed a following where you've even mentioned Newsweek magazine.
That was the luckiest and strangest thing ever. We were talking about it before this, that I got a phone call one day, and it was a young lady who said, I'm with Newsweek magazine, and we're doing an article. Y'all are in it. Could you send us some pictures? Well, I was so sure that this was a nothing burger that I called our photographer up and said, hey, could you send these people some pictures? And she did, and that's the last I heard of it for 2 months. And 2 months later, in a single day, I had like 80 phone calls and messages and things online, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, you're number one. I'm like, what do you mean I'm number one? He said, well, the Red Dragon, this article came out, and you're the top venue in the world. I said, oh, you mean in Baton Rouge? No, in the world, this is Newsweek. So it took me a little while to get the article. I had to go online and get it. And it turned out they did an article called The 10 Music Meccas of the World that you have to visit, at some time in your life. And there was only one in the U.S., and it was the number one thing, and it was us. I said, how does that happen? I mean, turns out this writer had come to a show there about 6 months before, didn't even introduce themselves, just came to a show, had so much fun at it, and it was so different than anything they had ever done, and they had never heard of the word of a place called a listening room, which is kind of everybody says it's a new thing. It's not. We started one 19 years ago, but at the time, nobody used that term. Now it's almost a common term. It was a term that you would describe a place as. We were at a Folk Alliance conference one day, and somebody talked about a famous venue in Oklahoma City called the Blue Door. And one musician said to the other, oh man, you're going to love that place. It's a real listening room. And just that listening room, that is my telephone that's decided to go rambunctious on me.
Hey, that's what we should do with all technologies like that now, because we want to get back to human interaction, which is one of the things you have brought about. Now, the thing about the listening room, for those of you who don't know, it's an incredibly comfortable environment. You got couches laid out there. When you come to a show at the Red Dragon, it's so relaxed. This is the very kind of thing that I believe in my heart. This is one of the grassroots efforts to rebuild live music again, which is sadly kind of losing its place in all of our hearts. Chris and I are both old enough to remember when, well, of course, I'm much older than he, actually, when concerts were the thing. I can remember going to concerts where the experience was as as important as the show itself. And this is something that he's bringing back. No wonder he's a #1.
Well, that I tell you what, as flattering as that was. It's definitely not true, but it was so nice of it to happen, and it helped us with. You struggle every moment when you're in the music business. You know that everybody that has a connection to live music knows that it's a lifelong struggle, and nobody really does this for the money. Nobody ever has. They do it for a love of it. Now, some people get sidetracked by money, but it wasn't why they got into it. Every big band, every Rolling Stones that's out there making $100 million on a tour got into it because they loved the music. They were just, Rolling Stones were an R&B band, and they were making no money and sleeping on each other's floors and stuff like this. And just looking back at their history, you realize that although they got to the very top of the ladder, they started out at the very bottom, just like all the rest of us.
Everybody does, but one of the unique things that you, I think, brought, and you mentioned it before a moment ago, the band gets all the money.
Yeah, we've done that. We started that right from the start. It's 100% of the money from the Red Dragon Listening Room goes to the artists, and we've been able to stay with that. Now, we started a series at another theater that became a for-profit series because we didn't realize years ago that you cannot get your health insurance through a nonprofit if you sit on the board of directors. It's a law. I had no idea that was the case, and we were about to try and buy health insurance for ourselves when we went into this, a number of years back. So 7 years ago, we started a for-profit series at the Manship Theater. And we did that for one reason, and that was to pay our health insurance. Well, as time went by, we actually started to get a little income from that, which was, that never hurts.
A very welcome thing, because the old adage that, how do you make a small fortune in the music business is to start with a large one.
Start with a large one.
That's right, because it becomes small quickly.
Oh, and you're not kidding.
One of the other things I'm going to continue on where we were a moment ago, where by the artists getting the money, the word spread through the agents and through artists around the country, and everybody wanted to come.
We started getting people that should never even return our phone calls, but they would see what it is we were doing, and somebody would describe it to them, and they would come out. And I guess what really put everything on the map was we had the great songwriter Guy Clark, and we had contacted his agent. And the agency that had him, and they wouldn't give him to us no matter what. I mean, we were too small, we weren't significant enough. And I eventually got a hold of the owner of the agency, and I made him an offer they couldn't refuse. It was so close to, it was that mafia line of making the offer. And so anyway, we offered triple what he was making in the market. And his agent thought I was nuts. But they're not going to turn down money, so they took it, and we went out and started selling tickets at $100 a pop. And the phone calls I got from people thinking we were nuts would have scared you. But the first show sold out in 38 minutes. 38 minutes, we had enough people to fill the room at $100 a pop. So I called the agent back and said, "Hey, we've sold that show out. Can we get another day?" And he said, "Well, the Friday's open. Well, what kind of deal?" I said, "No deal, same thing, just," and okay, so we filled that one up. It took 3 days. So we took a third day, and we had 3 sold-out shows in a row. And we had these massive guarantees on it, which were triple their normal fee. But as we always did, we would take whatever the overage was and shove it across the table to them at the end of the night. And that happened, and Guy Clark was on the other side of the table, and he took his big fee and he shoved all the rest of it back to us and said, in a way only Guy Clark could, he said, this X number of dollars is my fee. He said, you take the rest of this, buy yourself some new speakers, yours suck. And I thought that was the greatest line in the world. He would be magnanimous and still be a curmudgeon. I mentioned that story. I told that to his guitarist who played with him for 20 years, and his guitarist said, "Well, that's Guy." He said, "He's 51% angel and 49% asshole." hope I haven't said a word I shouldn't say here.
No,
but
that's okay. We can get away with it here. Okay? This is
Okay.
like cable, okay? We can get
I
away
love
with it here.
I love it. But when he said that, I started laughing, and he goes, "And you know, Chris, sometimes those numbers get reversed."
Well, now you've had some other people there. You had Joan Baez play
Oh,
there.
sweetest lady in the world. I can't even tell one of the stories of. Well, let me see if I can clean this one up a little bit. How I met Joan Baez. We have her booked because her producer was living in Baton Rouge at the time. And the first time she walks in the door is the day of the show. She comes in to do her sound check, and I'm nervous as can be. "Oh, Miss Baez, it's such a pleasure to meet you." And I go to shake her hand. She takes my hand and pulls me in to within inches of her face. She says, "So, I hear you're an effing Republican." And I was so stunned, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And I said, "Well, no, I'm not. I'm an effing libertarian." I said, "Everybody hates us." She says, "Oh, I don't hate libertarians." And she put her arm around me and said, "Let's go do sound check." The entire day went that way. Everything possible that could be good and wonderful happened at that show, ending at the end of the night with her driving off after saying goodbye and hugging every person in the place. She drives off, and as they pull onto Florida Boulevard, the car stops and pulls back in. And out pops Joan. And she comes running in, and I think, oh my goodness, she must have forgot to use the restroom or something. No, she forgot to hug my daughter goodbye. She goes and finds my daughter, gives her a big hug goodbye, and then leaves. That is the person Joan Baez is. Sweetest person I've ever met.
All right. Well, see, that's one of the marvelous stories of the music business. Now, to take away from the music business just a minute and talk to Chris about who else he is besides an impresario, you're a baseball player.
Oh, I'm a washed-up old baseball player, but I'm playing again. I've been
Never washed up, just maybe a little
throwing
dry,
a whole
a
lot
little bit.
slower.
Okay, well, okay.
I'm
I'm walking
60
slower.
now.
I mean,
I am 60 now, and
for me, that's a young man. Okay.
I feel fortunate that I can still throw my age. I can still throw 60 miles an hour, and some people who knew me back when I played would tell you I never threw much faster than that anyway. So, but I'm enjoying playing again. My brother and a friend are going off to these Senior World Series. And I help train them. I help get them in shape for it, and I'm throwing batting practice. You know, you throw 150 pitches in a day at my age, you're going to be sore for a little while.
Get the old liniment out there and kind
Well,
of.
I'll tell you, it keeps this part sore, and it keeps this part just a little skinnier than it was, which
Well,
is
that's a good thing.
uh,
Although the exercise chewing the Bazooka Joe bubble gum, that would have been something to keep it going too.
Oh,
and
my
besides
goodness.
being a music impresario, a baseball player, and former owner of a record company, he's also a published author. He's got a new book called Posting Positive, and soon to come Posting Positive 2. Tell us a little about what you got here.
It basically was the pandemic hit and everything went negative. If you went online, it was all politics or COVID, both of which are all negative. I mean, and people were depressed. I could see that coming. I could see the onslaught of depression in the U.S. and even in our little world here, we've seen people that have taken their lives. Yes. We've seen people that are, and I just didn't want to be a part of that. I used to talk a lot of politics when up until a year ago, and I stopped cold turkey and decided everything I was going to do was going to be positive. So I started posting positive stories, things that were, for the most part, fun or funny, and the butt of all jokes are me. I'm not really ripping into anybody too badly on anything, maybe tangentially, but for the most part, it's most of the screw-ups and crazy stories of the dullest person you've ever met, which that's me. So
Well, he's really not that dull, I promise you that. But what's coming up next for the Red Dragon, either in shows or out shows? You're doing some outdoor things too, I understand.
We just did one the other night.
Okay.
We did one. We had Ruthie Foster come in, Blues Artist of the Year, female Blues Artist of the Year, and just a pleasure to host. We had one show with her before. This one had to be outdoors because of COVID. So we book it, and the day rolls around, and we're always worried about rain. we don't worry so much about temperature. We should have. It was a little cool, but it wasn't half as cool as I guess the other people selling fear are the weatherman, because I had people calling up, it's going to be cold, I don't want to come. And we had a bunch of cancellations, but it wasn't that bad. We put up windbreaks and had heaters out there, propane heaters, and it ended up coming off really well. I mean, we didn't have as big a crowd as we would have had, but fantastic show. Ruthie Foster, if you ever get the chance to see her, the lady is amazing.
And everyone out there should realize this. Not just the weather. You're going to have heaters out there, and the show's going to be hot. So I wouldn't worry about that from being cold weather. I worry more about the hot weather we have here. That's when we go back inside. Okay.
It was fun watching people that, if you think it was so cold that everybody was bundled up and doing this, there were couples that were out on the floor dancing.
Yes.
We did the whole thing on a friend of mine's property with a 3,000 square foot deck. Well, this deck was so large that when people talk about social distancing, hell, you can be 50 feet from the nearest people if you want to be. And it worked out perfectly that there was dancing space. So that's something we've never been able to do at the Red Dragon. There's no space.
No, it's filled with couches and all like that.
Yeah.
But which makes it a nice warm and fuzzy environment. And now we have a little more loose, open, and exciting environment. This is why I want to encourage everybody to come to the Red Dragon, come to what is going to bring live music back. And I think that energy is something we all could use. So, Chris, getting back to your book, where is this book available?
Well, locally at Cottonwood Books, but nationally, Amazon. You hit Amazon, it's part of Amazon Prime. They'll ship it to you free. The book, it runs $20 at all locations, and that kind of helps us weather the storm. So,
there you go.
So I'm happy to
get
hawk
into
the
it.
book. It
Be
really
positive.
does.
And they'll be posting Positive 2 coming out soon.
It
right?
is. My daughter is my editor, and she's got 2 chapters left to finish, and we will have the second book out in March, and then we're going to do a third book, and it's going to be all music stories.
Hey, you heard it here first, folks. That's something to look forward to, because he's got a million music stories. I promise you that. I've heard some of them, and they are pretty much tremendous. And who knows what all we'll hear next. And don't forget, there's other merch available. Let me show you some of the shirts he brought. Check it out for all us old hippies. You know, we got the tie-dye version of the Red Dragon shirt. I'm sure these are available. And we've also got your regular black, very formal attire, which is also available. And these can be found at the Red Dragon, of course.
Of course.
But also where else? Or
Well,
just to ride in, you have a website?
Yeah, we just Facebook. Just drop me a note on Facebook. I literally hand deliver them in town because I'm too cheap to ship them. It saves $5 and it gives me a chance to go out and talk to people, which is something that's not happening these days. People aren't talking to each other. I'm still talking to folks. I walk up and strike up conversations, and everybody thinks I'm nuts for about a minute, and then they get used to the fact that people are talking to them again.
And that's we all need that right now after this whole, now almost a complete year of this COVID disaster. But with people like Chris, it's going to bring things about and make life better for everybody. So I want to thank Chris Maxwell for coming by today. I want y'all to check out his book, certainly available at Amazon. Check him out on Facebook. Get you a shirt. They're too cool to not have. And of course, come sign up on our YouTube page. That's Baton Rouge's Live Music at YouTube. And we're also on Facebook, either at my personal site, Bob Sanchez, or at Baton Rouge's Live Music. So we hope to see you all again. Let's all thank Chris Maxwell for coming. This has been a remarkable discussion. I hope we'll have him back.
Thanks so much
See
for
you
having me.
later. You're welcome. Thank you.